Okay, well, it's not a week when Guildford Junior Chess Club is holding a meeting, but I thought I would try and entertain you with a session on En Passant, the En Passant capture. Now, for all the kids that are watching, and I've noticed that although children tend to say that they know what En Passant is, when it comes to actually executing it a game, they often forget to do it. Just to show you what En Passant actually is, let me demonstrate in the simplest possible way before we start the video really in earnest. And I'm just going to play out a couple of moves here where white pushes on. Now, this was a favourite of the old world champion Wilhelm Steinitz, but it's not thought to be much good these days. Too committal for white. He's pushing pawns a bit too early in the game. But let's say black goes d5. Now, what has happened here? White has got a pawn on his 5th rank. Note that this is white's 5th rank. And if we turn the board around, this will be black's 5th rank. So white's pawn has reached the 5th rank, and black decides to push a pawn past him, coming from its original square. This means that white can capture the pawn en passant if he wants to, and you do it like this. It's as simple as that. Just to drop back a couple of moves, let's say black played here. I don't know why he would do that. White developed the knight protecting the pawn, and then black decided to push on by. White could not capture en passant in this position because the enemy pawn has not come from its original square. Right, I hope that's cleared that up. Now I've got a bit of a brain twister for you, which I think strong players are going to appreciate. How does black construct a helpmate against himself in 6 moves, where the game ends with an en passant capture? So white to play and win in 6 moves, a checkmate assisted by black, we call that a helpmate, where the final move is an en passant capture. I think there are 2 different ways. So this will be a really good puzzle for you to try out. I'm going to show you the answer at the end of the video, but it might be a good idea to turn the video off and give this a try. This is a rather advanced puzzle, and it should appeal to many of the strong players who I hope are watching this video. So let's crack on now, and I've got a very interesting game for you, which actually ended in en passant, and it's a game from a blindfold simul played by Miguel Najdorf, one of the famous Argentinian grandmasters. Post-war player, tremendous flair for the game of chess, an insatiable desire to play, and he's playing a guy called Dillman in a blindfold simul. This means that Najdorf was playing umpteen players at once, blindfold. There are various players in the world who have been gifted with this type of ability. There was a guy called George Koltanovsky who used to play mass blindfold simultaneous displays. Obviously Najdorf. There was a guy called Janos Flesch, a grandmaster from Hungary, who also used to do this. And this was a blindfold simul game played in 1948. Of course, Timur Gareev, the American grandmaster, is now also famous for this type of display. Having played one blindfold simul myself as a young man, playing 12 players with average rating at 1800 and scoring 50%, I thought that was quite a good result. But I couldn't sleep for 2 days after. You know, I thought, I'm never going to do this again because I could only see the chessboard in my mind. I couldn't get it out of my head. So blindfold's a bit of a mixed bag. You're either gifted at it or you're not. But it kind of requires you to hypnotise yourself and get into a certain frame of mind, which is not everybody's favoured state. Anyway, for a blindfold game, this is a particularly good a good game. And Najdorf was white, and he played into what we call the classical French. Black is setting up the French defence here. Pawns in the centre, e6 and d5, solidly reinforced by the knight. This is a favourite even today with black players the world over. And black generally chooses between bishop g5 and e5 here. But bishop g5 is logical. Black played bishop e7. Again, black's got choices. Black can play the very sharp McCutcheon variation with bishop b4. That's another story. Bishop e7 is an obviously solid move, but it does allow white to establish a small positional advantage early in the game, in that he not only takes the centre, but he gets rid of his so-called bad bishop. That's the bishop that would have been locked in behind his dark squared central pawns. Now that bishop's been exchanged off. And black's got what we call the bad bishop, locked in on white squares behind his central pawns. Black's task in the French is usually to find a good square for this bishop, or to somehow get it into the game. Anyway, black played a6. An interesting move, which prevents white from playing a move like knight b5, should he ever desire to do that. Castles is another way for black, and I think we can consider this the main line these days. But a6 is a perfectly reasonable move. Black's basically preparing to play c5. So if we're going to turn this into a little quiz, I would ask you, in this first really critical position of the game, what you think white should do here. If you'd like to play along with this idea, turn the video off and see if you can guess white's next move in this position. Okay, well, Najdorf basically kept it very simple and solid. He played queen to d2. He's not afraid of black capturing on d4 when he would simply take back with the knight. And queen d2 prepares to castle on the queen side. But white might not play this way. He's got other options, as we're going to see in the game. Anyway, black played knight c6. What struck me when I first saw this game was the quality of Najdorf's opponents. I mean, he's not a beginner or anything like that. And Najdorf might be playing, 30 or 40 people in this blindfold simultaneous display. And if they're all the same standard as Dillman, then this was an amazing achievement to play such a good game. Anyway, Najdorf took on c5 and black took back with the knight. For white, it's all about control of this square, the d4 square. So I guess if black had taken back with the queen here, then white would probably have castled on the queen side, keeping control over d4. And whilst he has control of this type, he's got much a better bishop and the plan of advancing his pawns on the king side to get a sort of king side pawn storm going together. So back at the game, knight takes c5 was played, and now Najdorf played it quietly. He played g3, he put his bishop on g2, and black played b5. So black is now trying to get some counterplay on the queen side. So this is the second position where I'd like you to forecast white's next move, if you would. Well, I suppose many of you castled in this position on either side of the board, but Najdorf played knight to d4. He probably did that to prevent black's idea of, say, b4 followed by knight e4. For instance, if white castles on the king side, black can go b4, black drops his knight back, and then perhaps white was afraid of knight e4, gaining a little bit of counterplay. Strong players, when they can, try to prevent enemy counterplay. And so knight d4 just does that, because white is covering the e4 square. And black decided to castle. Knight came back to e2, and Dillman simplified, followed by rook fc8, whereupon white castled on the queen side, and black dropped back with bishop e8. So you couldn't say that black was not playing reasonable chess. He set up a typical French position. Perhaps it's a little bit passive for black. We're wondering where black's counterplay is coming from. Sometimes it comes via the move f6. That could be a possibility. But when black plays that, he's got to be concerned about the fate of his e-pawn. That's one way to get counterplay. It looks as though black is maybe thinking about counterplaying the c-file with ideas such as rook c7 and rook a c8. But even if he gets that configuration, it's still difficult to make headway. Well, white played rook a b1. Funny looking move. For me, this is the only real move of the game where Najdorf shows that he's kind of playing blindfold chess here. I mean, that's, in a way, prophylaxis against the move like knight a4. That's prevention against this idea. White's protecting b2. White wants basically to launch a kingside attack, but he's battening down the hatches, preventing black's counterplay before he gets going on the king side. Once Najdorf gets going, the attack really motors forward. Anyway, black played queen a7, Now there could be some tricks because the queen is on the same diagonal as the king. So white blocks it out, blocks any counterplay out. And then black played queen e7. Again, a sign that he's willing just to sit there and watch how Najdorf breaks in. What should he do? Well, maybe he should play a move like b4 and try and get some action going on the queen side. But queen e7, he's waiting. Najdorf comes forward, f5. Very good move. And after bishop d7, white comes forward with f6. Well, we can say now that black is certainly playing too passively. He goes backwards. White takes on g7. Black takes back. I mean, if he thinks he's going to hold this position against a really strong player, then I'm afraid he's going to be disappointed because white has all the positional trumps in the position. Nevertheless, you've still got to win. So let's stop the video here and see if you can forecast how white took his advantage forward. What should white do next? Okay, well, white played a really good move now. Queen to e3. Not only does that protect the pawn on e5, it makes room for another idea, which after rook c7, I'm going to ask you to predict. How did white follow up his queen move with another very strong move? What did white do now? Okay, well, white moved in for the kill, really, with rook f6. This is an excellent move. It jams up black's king side. It forces black to play entirely passively. Here we are, black's just using his pieces to defend. And it allows white to build up an incredibly strong attack, which again, given the fact that this was a blindfold game, was a tremendous achievement by Najdorf. So again, let's take it from here. Black is attacking the pawn on e5. What did Najdorf play next? Well, he moved in with rook f6. Another excellent move. It's regrettable that that black is running out of ideas of squares, and we note that if he takes with the knight, white will take back with the pawn, and now black is in very serious trouble because there's no real move for him. If he goes queen f8, he leaves himself open to checkmates, starting with queen g5 check. If he goes queen g4, then I think the simplest move is just bishop f3. And suddenly the black queen is completely stuck for squares. So Dillman just dropped back with knight f8, but this gives the stronger player the upper hand. When you give the stronger player, everything in the position, you just ask him for trouble. And all Najdorf does is funnel his pieces into the attack, to the point at which black cannot defend. Very nice achievement. Black even got a bit of counterplay going on the queen side, but he set himself up for a very nice finish. Najdorf took on h7. Black recaptured. White took on h7. Queen takes h7. And now my final question to you is, find the finish. Shouldn't be too difficult. How did white finish black off? Okay, well, this is a rather nice finish. White went queen g5 check. And of course, if black goes into the corner, then it's an easy mop up here with queen to d8 check. The king must come out. We just take the queen and then take the rook. And black's position is disintegrating. The nice thing about the game is that queen g7 is answered by queen d8 check, then queen f8. Hope you can see what's coming up. I did say the game finished with En Passant, and we're going to see it now in all its glory. Bishop d3 check. Black must block with the pawn, and now this lovely checkmate. E takes f6 check, En Passant. A very rare and, to my mind, aesthetic finish. Well, I hope you enjoyed that game. Which brings us to now our helpmate in 6. And I hope you had a real good go at this. I mean, you might have spent an hour or two on this. It's quite complex, but there are 2 ways. So let's see what they are. Obviously, they're not going to involve any grandmasterly move orders. The very opposite. But perhaps my favourite way is the one where white starts off with b3. I wonder whether you got this. And black now plays in kamikaze style with h6 and then f5. White opens up his queen. Black starts the march with his king. I did say this is a helpmate. Black plays all sorts of suicidal moves to assist white to checkmate him. Then the queen comes to e8, blocking the king's retreat. Up comes the queen to g4. A final kamikaze move. And then white takes en passant. And that is the first checkmate. Let's go into reverse gear. e4 begins the second suicidal sequence with queen h5 coming in, d6, and now the unlikeliest of moves, g4. What is the point of that, you might say? Well, it's to put the bishop on h3 so that black can play king to d7. A discovered check is answered by a block, and now g takes f6 is another glorious checkmate, a helpmate in 6 moves. Well, that's kind of entertainment in many ways. At least I'm entertained by it. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed that little video. And next week we resume Guildford Junior Chess Club Lesson 7. Thanks for viewing.